Because if Forest do appeal this, can we get a harsher punishment? Or is this the baseline and then everything else is a free hit from it?
That would suggest that you need to do something in the transfer market. And the trouble is, everybody else has read that report. And therefore they're going to lowball.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another video with the guru that is Kieran. Kieran, it's good to have you back, mate, and thank you so much for taking the time because I know you're being pulled from pillar to post. So how you doing, mate?
I feel a bit like I'm the Grim Reaper in respect of football clubs, because it's been Derby, Sheffield Wednesday, Reading, West Brom, now Forest, Everton, Torquay, Southend, Scunthorpe. There's just so many clubs that are under challenges from various, either on pitch issues, financial issues, or owner issues. That I'm busy.
Well, from what everyone's saying, you might as well brush up on Villa and Newcastle and a couple of others for next year, because there's a lot of clubs that may be having to sell. From what we're hearing in the news, how true it is, we don't know, I guess. But yeah, Kieran, just a quick one. Oh, and just a reminder to everyone, please make sure you check out Kieran on The Price of Football. Great podcast as well. So make sure you're listening to that on all the usual platforms, isn't it? Spotify, iTunes, etc. But Kieran, if I could kick off by saying kind of your general thoughts on Forest punishment, because I think secretly, if we're being honest as Forest fans, we were quite happy, not happy, but do you know what I mean? Relieved with the amount of points that came back our way. How did you read the points?
I think they can be read in a variety of ways. I think the club was possibly slightly disappointed, but not hugely. They've been hoping for 2 or 3. Everton fans are unhappy because they were initially given a 10-point deduction, and therefore comparing that to Forest 4 seems to be inconsistent. My view as an outside observer is that if you are going to have financial rules, and there's a separate discussion to be had as to whether we should be having financial rules and whether the current set of rules are appropriate. If you're going to have a set of rules, then a points deduction is the only appropriate sanction, because if you threaten to fine Newcastle's owner £10 million, they'll say, where did we sign up? Because we can earn that in a microsecond with Saudi Arabia. So it has to be a punishment which does have an impact upon the club, and B, it has to be a deterrent in terms of other clubs who might decide that they're going to follow that course of action. When it comes to the number of points, I think the consensus of most people, we're probably within a point one way or the other as to what is generally deemed to be appropriate. 4 points is a win and a draw. If you read the Commission report from cover to cover, which I have done on more than one occasion, they say that the average number of points is 48 to 50. So it's just under a tenth of what a club can expect to earn in a year. So yeah, it's I don't think it's as outrageous or harsh as the Everton 10-point deduction, which took everybody aback.
But why were the Premier League going for 8? Because 8 is only one off what Portsmouth got when they went into administration. Were the Premier League doing that because they knew that would probably be too much and that they've asked for that? Or what was their thinking behind it? That to me felt the harshest bit of this whole sequence.
Yeah, the Premier League's not come out of either of the Everton or the Forest cases with its reputation enhanced, because it hasn't given a structured argument as to why it thought that in the case of Everton 10 and in the case of Forest 8 was an appropriate tariff. It's fairly well documented that Premier League clubs are at war with one another, and there's no cohesive or coherent set of actions coming from the top. There appears to be a lack of leadership. The Premier League's a very expensive body to run. The average salary for somebody, the average cost of employing each person in the Premier League is 141 grand. So you'd expect the people to be good, and what we're seeing, and I'm not denying that it's a tricky job, because you can't satisfy everybody, but I'm a great believer in backing up your comments, and this is where I think the Premier League has fallen down.
And if we look at it, I know you've done quite a lot of tweets, and guys, make sure you're following Kieran on Twitter. I'm sure you all already are. But you did this nice little breakdown of how Forest's ones you believe were put together. 3 point for a significant, well, for the breach, basically, initially, then another 3 for the significant breach, and then -2 for the mitigation on admission. What I haven't been able to figure out, Kieran, and I don't know if you know or have a clue, is how did they get to 10 points for Everton? Because a lot of my Everton mates are saying, well done, but someone explain to us how we got to 10 in the first place.
According to the Premier League, its idea was that it's 6 points for a breach, and then an extra 1 point for each 5 million above the breach. So because Everton were 20 million above, it would have been 6 plus 4. And if they were going to be consistent with their own logic, then in the case of Forest, given that Forest were 34 above, it would have been 13 points. And yet they said to the commission, we think it should be 8. We're going, well, you're now not even agreeing with yourself. So I think somebody's got one of those random number generator buttons on their calculator, and they're just using that instead.
And it's just like you and your luck if it's your club or not at the time, It's crazy. I think they should just give both clubs back their points. But this is the question that's really on the Forest fans' minds right now, Kieran. I don't know if you'll be able to answer this question or not, because the talk is about the appeal coming up. And should Forest do it or should they not do it? And the reason the fans want to know is because if Forest do appeal this, can we get a harsher punishment? Or is this the baseline and then everything else is a free hit from it?
Can you get a higher punishment? It's not impossible, but it is highly unlikely. Given what we have seen in terms of the initial commission, I don't think it's the same as when clubs appeal for a red card, and you can say, well, if it's a frivolous... there's, because of the complexity, this is what, a 50 or 60 page documents, lots of highly talented, highly professional people have pored over the results, and if on the basis of taken legal advice, Forest decide to put in an appeal, then I don't see how it could be seen to be frivolous. So in terms of the downsides from Forest's point of view, it's going to cost them money, but the money, if that's the difference between not being relegated and being relegated, then that money is well spent. And B, I think it increases the level of uncertainty for both Forest and other clubs at the bottom of the table. You are now going into matches on the basis of this 4 points, actually thinking, well, we really need to win this one. But if it had been a 2 point deduction, you might say, well, actually, a point here and a point there. So I think it affects the setup of the team. It affects the mental approach to a game that we have as fans, and we are part of the match. Whether sometimes I wish I'd say we could make a bit more noise, but we are part of the overall fabric of a match. And my concern would be we could have that last match of the season take place, and Nottingham Forest are in the bottom 3 on the basis of a 4 points deduction, and Club X finishes 1 point above. And then 3 days later, the appeal verdict comes out. Forest get another point in their favour. That takes them above. I mean, somebody else gets relegated. And it doesn't matter which side of you divide for you.
Yeah,
That makes the last game of the season a farce.
yeah. And it's a mess. And surely the Premier League wants to avoid that. But if Forest do appeal, Kieran, what do you think realistically their expectations would be in terms of points back? Because their statement was very strong in terms of they were shocked almost that they got points. But realistically, do you think we're looking at maybe 1 or 2 points back
Yeah.
at a max?
That's at the max.
Yeah.
As we've said before, the rules appear to be inconsistent with another. The rules appear to favour the richer clubs in the Premier League over those who have just been promoted or those who have even just been in the Premier League for a few years. But they are the rules. And, Forest came into the Premier League with full knowledge of those rules and they knew what they had to do. Nobody forced the club to sign John Joe Shelvey or Chris Wood on big contracts, Jesse Lingard and so on.
And short-term contracts as well, which didn't help on the PSR in like Chris Wood's case, for example.
Yeah.
So there is some blame to lie at the club, as much as I hate to admit it. But and in terms of looking forward, Kieran, because there's been a lot of rumours and paper talk this week about potentially Forest could breach PSR yet again this coming season. I've seen in the papers there's talks that they're going to have to sell Murillo, maybe Morgan Gibbs-White, and all before the 30th of June. I know you probably haven't had a chance to look at the numbers or crunch the numbers, but is this something realistically you think Forest may have to face up to again before and us fans just have to relive the pain and the stress of it?
Yes, I mean, I have been through the report, and according to, I think, the relevant part of the report, Forest had a PSR loss of £42 million in 2022, £54 million in 2023. You add those two together, it gets us to 96. Now, at the end of 2024, you've got 2 years of Premier League appearances, 1 year in the 1 year in the Championship. So it's 35 plus 35 plus 13. So you're allowed to lose 83. Okay, they've already lost 96 in the first 2 years. So they either have to make a profit of £13 million in 2024, or if they've not made that amount of profit, then they need to sell an asset to get themselves into that position. Again, looking at the report, it says that Forest estimate they're going to lose between 12 and 17 million pounds in 2024. So that's going to take us, 42 plus 54 is 96, plus best case scenario 12. That takes us to 106 million. You can lose 83. So that would suggest that you need to do something in the transfer market. And the trouble is, everybody else has read that report.
Yeah.
And therefore they're going to lowball when it comes to offering prices for players.
And they'll have to do it before the 30th of June as well, because that cutoff will still apply. And is that even take into account the fact that the 47.5 million for Brennan Johnson would have gone into this year, and we're still talking about Forest already being, breaching?
Well, one would assume so, because the player was sold. It is in this year's financial statements. Given that they lost £56 million in 2023, why are they projecting to only lose 12 million in 2024? That's a difference of around about 46 million pounds. That's a pretty Brennan Johnson size difference, isn't it? So I don't know for certain, but I would be amazed if the commission had said, we're going to ignore the Brennan Johnson, because it has taken place. It's got to appear in one of the 3 years. Doesn't matter which one.
Thanks. That's really depressing. That's really depressing.
But
it kind of brings me on to my next question, Kieran. It's about stadium as well, because there's all this talk about Forest potentially redeveloping the city ground. They're at war a bit. Well, not war is probably too strong a word, with the council, and there might be talks of moving off-site. Do stadium or ground developments and things like that, would that come under PSR? Because we are hearing a lot of promises from the club about, these new stands that might happen in the city ground, etc. Is this something we'll probably see be on hold? And does it come under PSR?
It's excluded from PSR. If you take a look at PSR, it specifically excludes infrastructure costs.
Okay.
So anything to do with the stadium is deemed to be what we might call virtue spending. It's something which is going to improve facilities, improve the ability to offer services to players, and therefore is there to be encouraged. So if you spend money on infrastructure, women's team, academy, or community schemes, all of those costs are ignored for PSR purposes. And that's why we've seen Spurs, for example, spend £1 billion on their new stadium. I don't know whether you've been there. It's fantastic, but it's not going to be a detriment to their PSR calcs.
That's interesting. So when it comes to the Everton stuff, the actual stadium didn't cost them their issues.
No.
Okay, well, that's relieving to know. So any investment that Marinakis may want to put into the stadium, he can basically put as much as he wants in.
Billy Boots, yeah.
No doubt about reason, yeah. Okay. That's actually good news. You cheered me up with that one, because that's been worrying the fans quite a bit there. You see, give and you take with me, Kieran. It's good to see. And then kind of something that I've been thinking about is a very layman question here. But there's been talks about, like, couldn't Forest, and these are questions coming from the fans, couldn't Forest, to have avoided PSR, potentially done more dealings with Olympiacos? Or is there certain limitations to what could happen between sister clubs there? Because, like, couldn't we have just, sold 2 or 3 of our reserve deadwood players, maybe got 10, 15, 20 million extra out of it? Is there actual rules against the way conduct can be done between the two clubs?
You used to get a free pass in relation to transactions with what we regard as related or associated parties. And if you take a look at some clubs in the multi-club models, there's been eyebrows raised with regards to Frank Lampard coming to Manchester City, Aaron Moy coming to Manchester City on a free and then being sold immediately, effectively, for £9 million to Huddersfield Town. You look at Watford, where they sold their player of the season to Udinese, which again, part of the same group, who immediately put him back on loan with, funnily enough, Watford. So there has been historic problems. I think the Premier League are trying to tighten up those rules very much on the basis of they're a bit concerned about Newcastle, and they appear to be gunning for Newcastle. And I know Newcastle fans are very upset about that. Yet there is scope for multi-club transactions, but they are subject to greater scrutiny, and they would be assessed at fair value these days rather than the actual prices being quoted.
Right, okay. And then just to wrap up, because I know how busy you are and I don't want to keep you any longer, 2 quick fire questions. In your opinion, do you think Forest will appeal? And if they do, what would you see the outcome to be? Because when I asked you this last time, you said 6 points, you reckoned, and you were technically correct without the mitigation. So what's the Kieran mind saying on this one?
Okay, I'll repeat. If I was this good at predicting, I'll be doing the lottery each week. I think that there is a 70-30 chance that they will appeal, and I think that on the basis of the appeal, the 4 points will be reduced to 3.
Wow. Okay. Not wiped out as I think Marinakis wants, potentially 3. And would that be with the extra mitigation coming onto it? So Forest trying to just argue an extra mitigation point that would get it there rather than a reduction in the tariff?
I mean, the people who are at the commission, they are very professional in terms of making their judgment. You've only got to read through it. They have not been frivolous or casual with regards to their approach. They clearly have got legal and financial backgrounds as well. I think that Forest might be able to say that the rules are stacked against clubs that have been promoted and plead for, try to get a bit of sympathy on that basis. The trouble is that the other side will say, well, Brentford did it, Palace did it, Brighton done it, and they've all managed to stay in the Premier League, so why can't Forest do it? I stuck out a tweet yesterday which showed that Forest were promoted with a squad which cost just £12 million.
Yeah.
How can you compete against squads which cost over £1 billion? So therefore, surely if the Premier League wants to have a competitive competition, then the rules as they are presently constructed are not fit for purpose. But the Commission will probably say, well, that's a separate argument. So, one point I think would be a very good result from 4-3. There's a 50-50 chance that they'll uphold it. But I always try to be positive.
Yeah, we need to be positive. And just very quickly, Kieran, can I just add this one on? With the talk of the change coming in the summer towards a more UEFA style model, do you think that would help or hinder the so-called Big Six, or would it help the other 14 in that? Well, they're talking about, so I've heard 85%, if not higher, in terms of revenue streams. But who do you think that favors more?
Oh, it very much favours the existing elite because we've got an expanded Champions League from 24-25. So there is the potential that the club winning the Champions League could generate around about 200 million from it, from TV money and gate receipts, and that's before taking into consideration sponsor bonuses. Forest won't be generating 200 million themselves. From the Premier League. So you take 70% of an extra 200 million of 150. That's on top of all your Premier League earnings. If Forest's income is probably in the region of 160, 180, the gap is going to be maintained. The aim is to keep, and I don't mean this as a criticism of any of the non-Big Six club. The aim is to keep the riffraff in their place as far as the elite are concerned.
Well, Kieran, listen, I've taken up way too much of your time, as always. I know how busy you are. I'm looking forward to seeing you on my TV, no doubt, later on this afternoon on
People
some
must be so fed up of me.
And we did have one of the questions from the guys. They were like, so was Kieran living under a rock before PSR was invented? Could you ask him that?
I'd like to go back and live there.
Listen, Kieran, I can't thank you enough for your time. Guys, make sure you go check out Kieran's podcast and tune in on TalkSport, BBC and Sky and everywhere else. And no doubt you'll get to see him. But thank you again so much, Kieran. And we'll speak soon, no doubt.
Cheers, Wolfie. I'll see you after the appeal.
Yeah. Cheers.